What is going on, guys? Welcome back again to the channel, and once again back to another dinosaur deck profile. I know what you're thinking, this is like the 5 millionth dinosaur video that I've done, but I just enjoy the deck so much. Maybe it's all that my reptile brain can handle, I don't know. But I think one thing that's really cool now that we can actually take advantage of is the brand new Crossout Designator. So Crossout Designator came out in the most recent Megatin, and it's a Call by the Grave on steroids. So you can basically pick like whichever card is in your main deck, banish it, and then for the rest of the turn that card's effects are negated. So it's like Call by the Grave, but instead you get to pick the card, and it's only for this turn. So it's nice that, let's just say that you call Ash, then basically Ash is only negated for this turn. So let's just say that you go through your turn, they try to Ash you, you stop it with Crossout Designator. Then on their turn you can still activate Ash. Whereas with Call by the Grave, it's negated until the end of the next turn. So if you try to Ash your opponent after that, then your Ash is also negated. But what's also really nice about Crossout is that it can actually negate a lot of other cards that don't actually send themselves to the graveyard. So for example, cards like Nibiru, cards like Infinite and Permanent, so cards that aren't even monster cards. It can negate Gamma, stuff like that. So cards that would stop you, that Call by the Grave actually can't even hit. I think this deck definitely still has a whole lot of firepower. It did lose a lot of consistency by only having the one Misc, because now you're forced to search for Misc for pretty much at least one search out of your turn. But what's really cool is that with Crossout and with Called By and things like that, with other hand trap stoppers, or even if your opponent just doesn't have any hand traps or whatever, you can end on some pretty crazy boards with up to like, anywhere between like 7 to like 9 disruptions and stuff like that. So it's actually pretty wild, the stuff that you can do with the deck. There's like a lot of different avenues you can take, and I'll kind of go over some optimizations as well that I thought of when I was kind of thinking about the deck after playing it a couple tourneys. And you'll see with like at the end when I kind of go through like a quick little combo of the things that you can do with the deck, you get an idea of what it can still do. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like these videos or find them helpful. Helps me out a lot with promoting it to other people and getting the channel to grow. Without further ado, I'll go into it, and I'll make it pretty quick since I've done so many of these. So first off, of course, we have the 3 Oviraptor, and unfortunately we have the 1 Misc. It's unfortunate, but we make do with what we can. We have a lot of ways to search it, so it's really not that big a deal. As far as the other 4-star dinos, we're also looking at 1 Giant Rex. You really kind of need this for like extenders. Next off, for some of the other starters, we have double Animadorn still. You could possibly go triple on these if you really wanted to, but I felt like double was the better option. Also, with now that I got an ultra reprint in the Megatins, it's much cheaper. The deck is much more affordable. As far as the babies go, we're running the 3 baby Cerasauruses and then the 1 Petite. Next up for the pill targets, we have the Pankratops and then the 2 UCTs. So this is a going first build. However, having Pank as you can end your combo on Pank by using the last Petite that you use in the combo, or going second. Pank is obviously really good for you, and it's also searchable off of Ovi. So Pank is just good to have in general in the deck, and the 2 UCTs are pretty standard. Next up, we have the scrap package. I try to keep it as minimal as possible because a lot of the scrap monsters are bricks. Like these 2 are kind of bricks. I mean, Chimera not as much, but Golem definitely. And then Raptor. Raptor is only full combo if you also have Lost World. And so I'd rather have something like OV in hand, but I had a pretty nice combo I had with the Golem that I like, and I'll go through that as well. But if you wanted to be a bit more consistent, I'd probably switch this over to 1 Raptor. I'm kind of debating on what I want to do about the fridge. Next up for the hand traps, we run the Gamma package. Definitely one of the best hand traps to run in the game, I feel like. So strong in defending against like monster effects on your turn and your opponent's turn. Plus Gamma also gets the body off the board, which a lot of decks tend to need to continue comboing. Next off for the Ghost Girls, we're running 2 Ash and 1 Bell. I didn't really see the need to run 3 Ash. Bell is actually a really strong hand trap, and I actually really like it in general. The reason why I run 1 is because I also needed like a 3-star tuner for the combo with the Scrap Golem I was talking about. And I figured 3 Ash wasn't necessary. Plus we have the extra Crossout target in case they happen to be running Bell. And then lastly, we have 2 Imperms. Imperms are just really nice because they dodge triple tactics. Also, you can cross out an Imperm and stuff like that. So one thing you might want to consider is running like maybe like a 3rd Imperm, or like 2 Imperms and a Veiler, something like that. That way you also have a Veiler target for Crossout. Overall, I feel like this package was pretty good. I saw them decently enough, and there were several times where like I crossed out like an Imperm or an Ash or something. I think even one time where I crossed out a Gamma. So like these targets I think are really helpful. Next off for the spells, we have the 1 Terraforming and then the 3 Lost Worlds. I usually end up side decking out the Terraforming after the first duel because Droll hurts this deck a bit more than how it used to in the past. But yeah, Lost World is a pretty strong staple in the deck. I mean, everybody knows what it does at this point, or if you don't, then you should definitely read it because it is a crazy card that does so many different things. Triple Fossil Dig, pretty standard, and of course the double pill as usual. Next up for the tech, we're running double Crossout Designator. I had a hard time finding a spot for a third one, plus I didn't feel like it was super necessary. We are also running the one called by because called by is a free negate essentially, whereas Designator you have to have the card in your deck. So if you drew something like, let's just say you drew like double Imperm Crossout, then you can't cross out an Imperm. Lastly, we're running double Prosperity. You can probably tech these out, honestly. I like them in certain scenarios, especially because now that we only have the one Misc, searching for like that extra combo piece can be really helpful, especially when you search for 6. And since we have so many ways to stop hand traps in this deck, being the 3 main spells right here, plus the gammas, it's usually pretty often that you'll be able to resolve this if you need it. If not, then it's just a bait for Ash, which is perfect because that means that your Misc is live basically, unless they have Lancia. The deck isn't as designed to go second anymore. You could even use like spell and trap removal for these as well, because that's one thing this deck has a hard time with. I think it's Crossout Designator really kind of makes the deck a lot more powerful again, so I think that having these in if you can get them is really good. But I understand these are kind of not so budget friendly at the moment. Next up for the extra deck, we have the one Link Karibo that's been standard for forever because of Venom Adorned. Scrap Wyvern because we're running the scrap package. Halq Fibrax is a pretty nice tech because basically what we do is we go into Scrap Wyvern, kind of go through the scrap package, but we summon the Golem off of the Scrap Wyvern for the second effect. And then after that, we use the Golem to bring back the Raptor. Then we go Raptor and Scrap Wyvern into Halq Fibrax. Halq Fibrax summon either Bell or Ash. You actually use the Golem and then the Ash to go into Borderlord Savage. And that way you have Borderlord Savage. You still have a lot more plays after that too. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like. Then we also have Cyframe Lord Lambda because we are running the Gamma package, and this is just so nice to have, especially when you're concerned about something like a nib or something like that, or something else that's going to like stop your combo. Because Misc makes the dinosaur side of your combo safe, the other side of it is not, so having a Cyframe Lord Lambda live is always really nice. Also the Pentastag just to go for damage, Nightmare Phoenix for spell and trap removal, Unicorn for just removal in general, Oppo for protection, and then lastly the access code talker, mostly because we run the Nightmare Unicorn also, so they kind of give it an extra 1000 buff. But access code talker because it's you run so many different types in this deck, or so many different attributes, that it's very possible for you to have like roughly like 3 or 4 pops off access code if you need it. Next up for the XZ's package, we run the one Baguska. This kind of does hurt you as well, but against other dinosaur decks, this shuts them down entirely for the turn. So Baguska is really nice for that. We have Dweller because Dweller hurts so many decks right now, especially stuff like Drytron, Shadalls, Tri-Brigade, things like that. Yugioh because spell and trap cards are still kind of an issue sometimes. Dolka, of course, for the monster negates. And then lastly, the 2 synchro monsters we have are Borderlord Savage Dragon because it's such a strong card, one of the best synchros in the game, as well as Cyframe Lord Omega. You can kind of say the same thing, but this is specifically good for another reason, because on your opponent's standby phase, you can actually recycle your Misc back into the graveyard for follow-up, which is really, really nice because if they somehow clear your entire board, you still have a Misc to banish for 4 to go into Ovi, and you can also banish your Giant Rex off of that, get some additional follow-up. So like, for example, if you were concerned about some type of negates, you do that, then you summon the Rex, then you go instantly into Dolka or something like that. That way you're protected to go for the rest of your combos. Cypher Lord Omega is really nice too. Plus, like on their main phase, after they activate something immediately, unless it's like Dark Ruler or something like that, you just activate Omega, banish it, and rip a card out of their hand. So not only are you ending on like roughly like 5-ish negates, you also have an Omega to just rip a card out of their hand, which is pretty nasty. Lastly, we have what I think is the most important part of the deck, that is the side deck, mostly because of Crossout. So we're running a few cards that we tech in just because they're very useful with Crossout that will actually hurt us if we get hit by them. So one is Nibiru. Nibiru isn't as bad because your dinosaurs are protected through Misc, but it is really nice because it's one, nice to have in general against other combo decks. 2, protects you if you have the Crossout against Nibiru because it can't stop you in rough and kind of weird parts of the play. That's kind of why I'm also kind of considering taking out the Halq Fibrax and the Scrap Golem because it makes the deck a little bit more susceptible to nib. Also 2 Lancia because 1, the Lancia kind of still hurts the deck a little bit, like it kind of hurts you from being able to activate the Misc effect, which sometimes you need, and it also hurts you from being able to go into UCT either via the pill or by its own effect. So we run 2 because in case we happen to draw one, we still have the second one live through Crossout. Also, Lancia does hurt some decks right now, specifically Tri-Brigade, and also it kind of hurts Shadal Invoked a little bit, which this deck kind of struggles against sometimes. Next up, we have Droll and Cockbird, one of the most warping cards of the format right now. Hits so many decks right now, specifically Drytron. As a Drytron player, I fucking hate this card, but it is what it is. Hurts this deck quite a bit as well, especially if you get hit with like both of these, you're pretty fucked. But Droll is just good for having generic staples against other decks, as well as if you feel like your opponent might side it against you, you can just side it in and then just basically Crossout Designate it, and then you're good to go. Next up for the spells, we run the triple Dark Ruler because this deck really can't afford to play droplets. It just doesn't have the material to spend on trying to, like, for example, if you have to like droplets for like 2 or 3, like it's hard for you to be able to play. So I prefer to run Dark Ruler in this deck, especially because UCT just by itself just knocks out an entire board. So Dark Ruler no more, just because it helps you just maintain advantage. Also, as for back row removal, we have 2 Lightning Storm, 1 Twin Twister, 1 MST. I would actually rather have 2 MSTs, to be honest, because it is a quick play spell and trap removal, which is really good for stuff like Schism. However, or even stuff like Imperial Order. However, I only have the 1 MST, surprisingly, which is kind of funny because I've been playing the game for fucking years, and I only have the 1 MST. I think sure I have like a comment somewhere, but I have to find it. But the Twin Twister, I would prefer to not have the cost of discarding a card, because like I said, this deck cannot afford as much as other decks to discard cards. And so you could be asking, well, why aren't you playing Cyclone? Because everybody, every time they see Dinos, says, I'm siding in Lancia. Lancia shuts off your Cyclone. So I'd rather have Twin Twister or MST, preferably MST. And lastly, for the traps, we have 2 Solemn Judgments and an Imperial Order. Also, I didn't think about this earlier, but you can actually cross out Order. That's kind of wild. I didn't think about that, but it's also a thing. Next off, we're going to be going through what is essentially full combo with Misc and Baby, just because this combo happens so often. And so I'll just go over basically how this combo works with just these 2 cards. So obviously we're going to start off by banishing Misc, discarding Misc, then we're going to banish it for the effect to summon the Archosaur. Usually you have something like Call by the Grave or Crossout or Gamma or something like that to be able to protect you. So usually this isn't that big of a deal. We're going to go Archosaur, obviously Archosaur effect, pop the baby, search for the pill. Baby effect, we're going to activate the effect to summon Oviraptor. Oviraptor effect to search. We are going to search for another baby. And so now we are going to normal summon the baby, activate the Ovi effect, popping the baby, summoning out the other baby. Make sure that if you do this, you are summoning the other baby, because always if you summon the same one, you cannot activate the effect of the one in graveyard, because it has move locations before its effect was able to activate. So if you are in like in a tournament, just be aware of that. If you're playing with friends, they probably don't give a shit, so you can probably just keep the same one, put in defense or whatever, but just be aware that it is a ruling that if you summon back the same one, it will not be able to activate the effect, so just be aware of that. We're going to activate the baby effect in graveyard, summoning the Scrap Raptor. Now we're going to go ahead and link off the Animadorn so that we have fodder for double evolution pill and Link Rebo. We're going to activate the Scrap Raptor, popping the baby. So now you can normal summon an extra scrap monster this turn. We're going to use the baby effect to summon a Petite. I'm going to keep the graveyard up here because I just realized it's a bit harder to see. So we're going to keep that up there. This will be our Link monster zone, etc. And so now that we have summoned the Petite, we're actually going to use the Scrap Raptor and the Link Rebo. Go into Scrap Wyvern. Now we're going to go ahead and use the Scrap Wyvern effect to bring back the Scrap Raptor. Pop the Scrap Raptor. We're going to go Chainlink 1 Scrap Raptor, searching for the Scrap Chimera. Chainlink 2 Scrap Wyvern to summon a Scrap monster from the deck, and then pop a card on the field. Quick reminder that if you are going second, you can also pop your opponent's cards with this effect once the monster is summoned. In this scenario, we're going first, so we're going to actually pop our own Petite. And then we're going to finish off the chain by searching for the Chimera. Next off, we're going to activate the Petite effect to summon a monster from the deck. And that is going to be Giant Rex. And then what we're going to do is we're actually activate the Scrap Golem effect to special summon back Scrap Raptor again. Now that we have a tuner on the board, we're going to link these 2 off into Halq, activate the Halq effect to special summon from the deck a level 3 or lower tuner monster. That's going to be Ash Blossom. And then now from here, there's a couple different things you can do. If you are concerned that the opponent has Nim and they have not used it yet, you can go into Appaloosa, because our next play after that is to go into the Borreload Savage Dragon. If for whatever reason somewhere in your combo got hit where you have like less monsters, I would actually probably normal summon the Scrap Chimera. You bring back the Scrap Raptor and kind of use those for like Appaloosa material, but obviously this board is kind of busy with monsters, so we're going to actually use the Halq, the Giant Rex, and the Ovi to go into Appaloosa with 3 negates. Keep in mind it only has 2 negates if you have Lost World on the field because it loses 500 attack. Then we're going to go ahead and use these 2 to synchro into Borreload Savage, activate the effect to equip the Scrap Wyvern. Next off, we're going to normal summon the Chimera, activate the effect to special summon back the Scrap Raptor. Have you been counting how many times we summoned Scrap Raptor? I think it's like 4 or 5 at this point. Next off, we are going to activate the double evolution pill, sending the Giant Rex. And basically any other non-dinosaur monster, really doesn't matter. Depending on what deck you're going against, it may matter. If you're concerned about your opponent, for example, if you're playing against Sky Striker, they do like to rip tuners out of your graveyard with Shark Cannon to go into access code. So we're going to go ahead and banish the Ash there. And then we're going to go ahead and summon the Powerhouse of a card, UCT. And we're going to summon back the Giant Rex. And then now we are going to actually use these 2. You can either synchro or Xyz, depending on what you want to do. So you could either go into Dolka, or you go like Abyss Dweller or something like that, or you could go Omega. In this situation, let's actually go Omega, so that way you can see kind of what else this deck can do. And then after that, we are going to go ahead and pass turn. So now what we have here is we have a 3 negate Oppo, we have a 2 negate Borreload Savage, but obviously only once per turn. We have a Disruption. In UCT, you're able to distribute the Chimera. And then now, what we're going to do is on our opponent's standby phase, we're going to activate Omega, putting back the Misc for follow-up for next turn. And then now we're also going to activate Omega to rip a card out of their hand during the main phase. And so now they are playing with 5 or less cards, depending on if they hand trap you or not. And they have to play through a 3 negate Oppo, buff-ass UCT, and a pretty strong Savage. So it's going to be a pretty hard time for them. Now, assuming that you also activated Gamma earlier this turn, you may also have like a Cyframe Lord Lambda, which will allow you to search for like a Gamma during the end phase, things like that. So it's a pretty wild deck with what you can do. So that's pretty much going to be it for the updated Dinosaur deck. Sorry if I talked a bit fast. I know that I've been through this deck so many times that I figured most people understand the majority of it at this point. And so I figured just wanted to get through as much as possible that we could show you the combo at the end. It is a pretty tight combo. I do like the fact that you can end on quite a few different options depending on which route you want to go to. One thing that I really like is that you have so much versatility in your extra deck that banishing 6 usually doesn't matter. And so with dinosaurs, it's really easy for you to just banish 6 for prosperity, and allows you to search for basically whatever you need. You could also decide to go for a going second build maybe, and swap out like these Crossout Designators with like Lightning Storms, or maybe like these Prosperities and other things like that. If there were some cards I would take out, it would definitely be the Scrap Golem, because it's kind of situational and it's a really bad brick in hand. If you really felt like it, you can maybe run Pank in the side instead if you wanted to. I'm trying to find kind of better replacements for Pot of Prosperity potentially. Having to have this resolve to be able to go combo sometimes kind of sucks and is kind of scary. But it also is kind of nice because if you are running Gamma, if you trained your opponent the first 2 games to have them worry about Gamma, then basically game 3 this is just a free card, because they're not gonna want to Ash it or anything like that, because they know that you might have Gamma in hand. And if you take out the Golem, you can actually change up the hand trap lineup as well. Like instead of running the Ashes and Bells, maybe you just want to run Drolls instead or whatever. But yeah, so if you end up taking out the Golem, you can kind of trade those cards around, as well as take out the Halq and run something else that's a bit more useful. Maybe like Dugares. There are a couple times where I would have liked to have Dugares. The only thing is I think this deck needs a bit more engine support. So that's kind of really nice, is that we actually have some more support coming out pretty soon. We have some dinosaur waifus coming out pretty soon actually. And they have like some kind of cool effects where the less life points you have, the stronger they get. They also search for some crazy like counter trap cards that I think might be kind of good. But what's really nice is that they do have destruction. They do have effects when they get destroyed by card effects. So since this deck focuses so much on destroying by card effect, it's really nice because you can kind of use them to combo into other things. So I think that since they have a couple of like level 4 monsters, those might be teched into the deck. The counter traps probably not so much, especially because you have to pay like half your life points for like a lot of this stuff, and how time rules work now, it's kind of risky. I am excited to get new support. The cards look really cool. That's kind of my thoughts on the deck so far. Like I said, feel free to leave a like and a subscribe if you like the video. Helps me out a lot. And I think that Dinosaur is one of the best budget decks around at the time. So like I said, there's some replacements for some of the more expensive cards, but with the reprints of Animadorned and a couple other staples like Lightning Storm, Talents, and other stuff like that, the deck has a lot of versatility. You can kind of play whatever you want in the deck. So that's kind of cool. That's pretty much it. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.